After what had been a very busy past few weeks with competitions, matches and qualifiers, we decided to spend a couple of days away in the rolling hills of Herefordshire. We decided to spend a couple of days fishing at Docklow Pools. This 17th century hamlet is the perfect retreat for the angler, but as this was a bit of a late booking, the only accommodation which was available was the Kingfisher Cottage. Now this accommodation is actually described as basic, but I'll be absolutely honest with you, even if I had the choice of all of the accommodations here, this was probably the cottage that I'd prefer just because of its location, and it had everything that we needed. We intended to spend a couple of days on the bank, so we wouldn't be in there long anyway. But as you can imagine, with a fishery like this, there is so many other facilities right here on site. One of the reasons why I decided to stay here was the Fisherman's Arms restaurant. It's an ideal place to get something to eat and drink each evening, and it means that you haven't got to travel off site, and with plenty of seating it was always going to be an enjoyable place to spend each evening. However, the main reason why we were here is to have a couple of days fishing. Now I'll be absolutely honest with you and say that it was always going to be a difficult decision deciding where to spend our 2 days fishing. This complex actually has 9 lakes on site, but it also has 6 private stretches of river for you to fish as well, including the River Wye, so it was always going to be a difficult decision. However, as this was a break from driving the thousands of miles that we do each summer whilst we're chasing qualifiers and on the match fishing scene, I decided to spend the 2 days right here on site just to cut down on travelling. One of the first things that I did was have a quick walk around the complex, and there were some very well known lakes here. The Mickey Mouse Lake, for example, that some of you may remember from being the venue that was used for the finals of the David Hall Publishing Drennan Match Fishing Cup competition, the famous Mickey Mouse Lake. And whilst I knew quite a few of these lakes already because I'd been here 8 or 9 years ago, I loved the idea of catching tench. It's not a species I catch very often, and the venues that I fish don't hold many, so I couldn't help myself and we decided to fish day one on Tench Lake. Now this pool isn't very big and it really lends itself more to float fishing and possibly pole fishing. However, I wanted to tackle it with a feeder, so I fished quite confidently. I fished with some pellets and some corn that we all know that tench love. I fished close to some lily beds. I'd got some next to an island opposite me, but I also had some lilies down to my left going into a corner, and I'll be absolutely honest with you and say that I really struggled. However, Dad was the star of the day. He fished a much more subtle approach. He fished a lovely, nice little waggler next to some lilies. He just kept flicking out 3 or 4 grains of corn, and as well as catching 4 or 5 little skimmers, he also caught 4 beautiful little tench. So for our second day, I decided to spend it on a lake that had a little bit more open water. Well, I'm on a completely different lake today. Behind me is Match Lake. As the name suggests, this is the lake that they have most of the matches on, and it's got quite a bit of open water. It has got 2 islands. It's still early in the morning, it's 8:30. It has gone a little bit cooler, but it's still very comfortable. So what I'm going to be doing on this session is I'm going to be having a go with the Pellet Waggler. Now I've got some open water. I've got an island out there which is about 30 metres away, with a lovely overhanging willow there as well. Now I'm not going to be fishing that far because I'm only going to be feeding 6mm pellets. That's the word on the street. That is the best size pellet to feed. So I'm going to start getting some pellets out there, start trying to build that swim up, and hopefully we're going to catch a few fish shallow. Well, the first thing that I did this morning was call into the on-site tackle shop. I couldn't believe how big that tackle shop is. When you look at it just from the front, it looks like it's going to be a pokey little tackle shop, but it just went on and on and on, a huge stock of tackle in there. And when you come to a new venue like this, when you don't really know what you're fishing for and that sort of thing, the local tackle shop is just, it can be a mine of information, you know, just by speaking to anglers that were already shopping in there, and the staff that work there managed to give me a bit of information on this lake, and that's why I've selected to fish here today. As you can see, it's very, very coloured. It's probably one of the most coloured lakes I've seen, which is always a great sign of feeding fish. It's flat calm, and it's about, I think the maximum depth is about 5 foot. So I'm just going to be firing some 6mm pellets out there. They assure me that 6mm are the best size to use, and as you can imagine, you can't catapult 6mm too far, so I'm not going to be fishing that far out, probably 20 metres, something like that. Just going to keep alternating the depth till we find the right depth to catch at. We're going to be feeding a hard pellet on a band. Lovely waggler fishing, you know all about pellet waggler fishing. And from what I hear, there are lots of F1s in here, but there are some proper carp as well. I'm just going to kick off by feeding about 4 to 6 6mm pellets, very, very frequently. Just want the fish to get used to that noise going in of the pellets, and I want to give them a reason to come and be in front of me, you know. So quite often the best way of doing that is just the frequency that you're feeding. So it's not usually a case of the amount that you're feeding, it's how often you're feeding it. And we might spot a feeding pattern. We might find that there's a better way of feeding, whether it be feeding first then casting over the top, or it could be cast out long, feed and then drag the waggler back into the pellets. We don't know. So I'm just going to start building up the swim. And as always, just keep looking for signs of a few fish moving out there under the surface. It is still early in the morning, so it might take a while to build this line up. Well, that's the first bite that we've had. I've been feeding now for about 20 minutes. That time I fed 3 lots of 5 and then cast over the top, slightly to the back of the feed area. It's not a big fish, it's the first of the day. There we go, we're off the mark. Yeah. Oh, shaking the hook out. Still got loads of energy. That's a lovely size, beautiful size fish. It's a brilliant start. Didn't expect that so early, to be fair. Like I said, I've been feeding for about 20 minutes now, building it up. Seen the odd fish moving, popping back. Let's see if we can catch some more. I'm just going to keep feeding this line now. What I will be doing is varying the feed. If we keep catching F1s like that, that'll be brilliant, but obviously it'd be nice to catch 1 or 2 bigger fish. So I'll just keep experimenting. If we keep catching, that's great. However, it would be nice to get 1 or 2 bigger fish. Now the rig that I'm using is very, very simple. It's one of the beauties of pellet waggler fishing. The setup that I've got is basically, it's an 11-foot waggler. It's the Horizon Pro, Commercial Pro 11 foot. That's all I need. I'm only casting 20 metres. So you don't need a long rod for this, and obviously 11-foot rod means that you can land fish much quicker when they come up. They're obviously much nearer to you because you've got a shorter rod. I've got that coupled with a 3000 reel Horizon, beautifully balanced. Okay, just mono, no braid or anything like that. And then what I've got on is the pellet waggler itself. Now in this case it's kicking off with a 6 gram pellet waggler. Okay, now that is a little bit heavier than what I actually need from where I'm fishing. However, the reason why I've got that on is because this peg has got a good 10 meters past the line that I'm fishing that approaches an overhanging willow. Because this waggler is heavier than what I need, the extra, I mean, it's probably at least 2 grams heavier than it needs to be. That extra 2 gram is going to allow me to cast to that overhanging willow so that I can hopefully pick off fish, shyer fish that are hanging back behind my feed and towards that island as well. So it can be a great way of just nicking off sometimes better fish at the back of your feed. Okay, these are just the simple rubber float stoppers that we use for pellet waggler fishing. 3 at the bottom, 1 at the top. You just slide those onto your line and that allows me to quickly and easily change the depth. Because with this sort of fishing you're constantly changing the depth. No shots down, nothing at all, just got the mono. And then I've just got the hook length. It's just a very short hook length. These are the 4-inch hook lengths that we use in method feeder fishing. The ready tied ones, the matrix ones, just with a band on, simple as that. And it's a size 14 hook, which I think's matched quite nice to a 6mm pellet. And that is it. There's nothing really there to go wrong. Such a simple way of fishing. And the reason why we don't have any shots down like that is because when I cast this out, I'm casting it amongst loose fed pellets. And so we want to encourage that hook bait to fall as naturally as possible and to fall through the water just like the loose fed pellets that we're putting in. You're trying to trick the fish. So by not having any shot there, you're just encouraging that hook bait to fall much more like the ones that we're catapulting out. Tiny little indication that's how it usually starts off, you know. The first few bites might be a little bit cautious until they get used to feeding on the pellets confidently. And then you might find that the peg gets stronger as they get more confident. They're taking the pellets more confidently. The bites are better, and sometimes they're just hooking themselves against the tip of the rod. Really positive bite, that one. Really surprised actually. This was only the 2nd fish, but it was a really clean, positive bite. Might be I don't know if it's another F1 this one, but that was right on the feed. So again it was feed 3 times and then drop the waggler right in the middle of the feed. Lovely fish. So I think it's starting to improve now. Just about hand size. Positive bite again, that one. Just fishing about 14 inches deep, 16 inches deep, something like that. It seems to be right at the minute. That's nearly every fish now caught on the feed, which has really surprised me. You know, usually when I've fished places like this, that's really a little bit later on into the session when the fish are really on the feed, when they're used to the pellets going in, they've been eating them. So it's a really good sign, but I'm just going to keep going with this, See if we can keep catching on that feed area. Like I say, I've got a 6 gram waggler on in order to go past the feed and go towards that tree. But at the moment there's no need to do that. If the fish are on the feed, I can just keep dropping the waggler right where the pellets are landing. That one took the line that time. It's brilliant when you see your line tightening up, even before you've had a chance to strike. But this is working really well now. That's a better fish, that one. Proper carp, that one. Erupted on the surface when I hooked it. Yeah, he's a better fish. It's been all F1s up to now. They're a lovely stamper fish. Really exciting fishing, especially when they're taking the bait off the surface. It's working really well now. Well, I don't think I've ever had a response quite as quick as that to the pellet waggler. Certainly early morning or mid-morning. Just goes to show how many fish there are in this lake. It's heavily coloured for a reason. It's obviously saying that the fish are feeding, but there haven't been that many fish caught. Well, I've hardly seen a fish caught, to be fair. It shows that, you know, the fish at this time of year are already up in the water, and by fishing something like this up in the water, targeting the fish where they are naturally anyway, it can be just a fantastic way to fish, and it's really exciting. It has been an absolute pleasure staying here at this fishery, and it's been a completely different change of pace from what we've been doing all summer. I've got to openly admit that we loved every minute, and I can't wait to get back.